and it's now time for America to wage war on the cartels.
Federal agents have dismantled a major drug network linking Mexico's most violent cartels. The joint CJNG Sinaloa operation was caught moving over 1,100 pounds of crystal meth through the state of Colorado, triggering the largest meth seizure in the state's history. Behind closed warehouse doors, inside what appeared to be a produce storage facility, officers found a hidden meth conversion lab running under commercial disguise. The bust shattered illusions that these cartels operate only near the border. Instead, it confirmed something far more dangerous. The infrastructure of Mexico's drug war now reaches deep into the American interior. Subscribe to Military Power to follow how this story unfolds and what comes next in the war just beneath the surface. For nearly 2 years, a silent pipeline of cartel-grade methamphetamine stretched through Colorado's urban centers, farmland corridors, and highway arteries. Agents from the DEA's Rocky Mountain Field Division, the FBI Denver office, and local law enforcement units collaborated across jurisdictions to follow the trail. Their target was not a street-level dealer, but an industrial-scale supply chain that treated meth as a commodity. According to investigators, the network served as a bridge between Mexican production zones and American distribution hubs, with Colorado acting as a central hub for handoffs. From there, shipments were funneled to neighboring states, including Kansas, Nebraska, and Utah. The scale of the operation shocked even the most seasoned agents. In total, authorities tracked and seized over 1,115 pounds of methamphetamine, an amount that translates to tens of millions of street-level doses. Each pound contains thousands of individual hits, and federal analysts emphasize the devastating reach such volume could have. In towns and cities across the Midwest, just one delivery from this pipeline could fuel addiction waves, overdoses, and the kind of gang-related violence often seen closer to the border. Colorado, they said, was no longer just a flyover state. It had become a focal point in a continental drug war. The logistics behind the smuggling operation revealed a new kind of enemy. This was not a rogue cell acting independently, but a coordinated enterprise with ties to both CJNG and Sinaloa, the two dominant cartels currently locked in brutal competition across Mexico. Intelligence recovered from intercepted communications and financial ledgers confirmed that both factions supplied the Colorado cell. Some shipments bore the marks of CJNG's high-volume packaging, while others matched Sinaloa's chemical fingerprints. Instead of fighting on American soil, the two groups used a shared network to reach buyers, avoid attention, and split profits. It was business logic wrapped in criminal infrastructure. Agents reported that shipments entered the United States concealed inside legitimate produce trucks. From the outside, nothing looked unusual. Bills of lading were clean, delivery routes matched genuine grocery chains, and vehicles passed through checkpoints without raising suspicion. But beneath crates of squash and avocados, vacuum-sealed bricks of meth were stacked layer by layer. The method had been refined over time to beat thermal scanners and drug-sniffing dogs. Cold air masked heat signatures, and the scent of organic matter confused detection tools. To the untrained eye, these were just supply runs. To those watching closely, they were chemical weapons in transit. The investigation gained momentum after a pattern of irregular deliveries raised flags with a regional cargo inspection team. Cross-referencing manifests with surveillance data, agents began mapping out a schedule that revealed the frequency and consistency of the operation. That information led them to several warehouses across Colorado, including one in Lakewood, that would become the centerpiece of the bust. What they found inside forever changed their understanding of cartel operations on American soil. If you were following this story, what would you want to know next? Leave a comment and share your thoughts. The next breakthrough would come not from the drugs themselves, but from what surrounded them. A hidden production line disguised in plain sight. In the far corner of an industrial warehouse in Lakewood, Colorado, agents made the discovery that would redefine the scope of the entire case. Hidden beneath stacked crates labeled as produce, a specific shipment of squash caught their attention. At first glance, everything seemed to be in order. The crates were stamped with import documentation from Mexico, the paperwork matched existing food distributor logs, and the content seemed typical of seasonal shipments. But when agents removed the top layers, they found something else. Buried beneath real vegetables were hundreds of carefully packaged bricks of crystal methamphetamine. This single haul weighed in at 733 pounds, making it the largest seizure of the investigation and one of the biggest methamphetamine busts in the history of Colorado. But the scale was not the only shocking detail. The packaging showed signs of meticulous planning. Each brick had been compressed to a precise quarter-pound measurement, wrapped in layers of heat-resistant plastic, and stacked in geometric order inside the produce crates. The outer boxes looked identical to legitimate food shipments. Some even bore fake barcodes and distributor logos that matched the records of regional grocery stores. The disguise was so convincing that without a tip-off or investigative trail, most inspections would have missed it. Agents described the packaging as industrial grade. It was not simply hidden, it was camouflaged. From the outside, there was no discernible smell, no thermal signature, and no signs of tampering. The crates had passed through multiple transportation hubs without raising any red flags. Cold storage masked the product's scent, and the organic materials mixed in the crates rendered visual inspection tools ineffective. By the time the load reached Lakewood, it had already crossed multiple jurisdictions, blending seamlessly into the larger commercial shipping stream. Inside the same facility, investigators found clear evidence that the warehouse was not just a passive stop for illegal cargo. It was an active meth conversion and processing site. In a sealed room behind the main loading area, agents uncovered commercial freezers, propane burners, industrial mixers, drying racks, and containers of chemical precursors. Measuring tools, sealing machines, and labeling stations were lined up in what appeared to be a production assembly line. The layout resembled that of a food processing plant, but the product was actually methamphetamine. This was not only trafficking, this was manufacturing on American soil. The DEA later classified the site as a full-scale conversion lab. That distinction carried weight. It meant the group behind the operation was not just moving product, they were producing it, packaging it, and staging it for distribution across multiple states. The seizure of 733 pounds in one facility suggested that the location was a regional hub, not a one-time hideout. It was built to sustain long-term operations. The workflow was structured, the equipment permanent, and the logistics refined. Agents even found colored tags and tracking codes on the bricks, each indicating a different outbound route. Omaha, Salt Lake City, and other regional cities were all listed destinations. Further investigation into the operation's structure revealed a level of coordination typically associated with corporations, not street-level gangs. There were defined roles for every person involved. Some handled inventory, others managed transportation schedules. A separate unit maintained fake documentation, including driver logs, shipping manifests, and warehouse rental agreements. One group monitored police activity in the surrounding area, using basic traffic reports and encrypted chat channels. These individuals operated quietly, blending into the roles of warehouse staff and contractors. The entire setup suggested a long-term presence, deeply embedded in the region's logistical ecosystem. The group relied heavily on encrypted communication tools. During the raid, agents recovered dozens of mobile devices, many of which had been wiped clean of data. However, data teams were able to extract partial logs showing coded language used to direct shipments. Phrases like green load and north trail appeared frequently, likely referring to specific meth batches and shipping routes. Some messages included notes about changing vehicle plates, rotating transport vehicles every few weeks, and using decoy trucks to confuse surveillance. The messages revealed a deliberate effort to stay off law enforcement radar. Financial operations followed a similar model of concealment. Traditional banking was avoided altogether. Instead, payments were made through a network of digital wallets, prepaid cards, and cryptocurrencies. Shell companies registered in Phoenix and El Paso acted as intermediaries, generating fake invoices for agricultural products. These invoices then appeared in the systems of real distributors, completing the illusion of a clean transaction. Money crept, following a path that was difficult to trace and nearly impossible to link back to a single individual. Colorado was not chosen by chance. The location offered strategic benefits that made it an ideal hub for a cartel. Centrally located within the United States, the state provides access to major highways that connect both coasts and the central Midwest. Shipments could reach multiple regions within a matter of days. Unlike border states, Colorado draws less suspicion and is less likely to be the target of routine border-focused enforcement operations. Additionally, the abundance of warehouse space, agricultural zoning, and cold storage infrastructure made it easy to blend in with legitimate business operations. Agents involved in the investigation noted that the warehouse was leased under a local holding company with no previous criminal record. The lease paperwork had been filed through a third-party real estate agency using a fabricated business profile that described the tenant as a distributor of farm goods. Everything on the surface appeared legal. Even background checks on the employees came back clean. This level of insulation made the operation especially difficult to detect. What makes this discovery particularly alarming is the implication that similar operations may already be in place in other states. If Colorado can be used as a distribution hub, then other interior regions with similar infrastructure might also host cartel-linked processing centers. The investigation into the Lakewood site raised questions about the broader reach of CJNG in Sinaloa, especially in areas far from the border. By operating in a place like Colorado, the cartels avoided the scrutiny that comes with moving goods through high surveillance zones. They exploited agricultural supply chains, legitimate shipping lanes, and financial blind spots in the digital economy. The result was a fully integrated system capable of moving millions of dollars worth of product without triggering alarms. Local law enforcement officials expressed concern about the discovery's long-term implications. Some spoke of the need for increased interagency cooperation, especially between federal task forces and state inspection units. Others called for better oversight of commercial warehouse leasing and cold storage facilities. If cartels are infiltrating the legitimate logistics industry, then traditional investigative methods may no longer be sufficient. This case made one thing clear: the cartels are evolving. They are no longer relying solely on brute force or border crossings. They are adapting to the modern world, hiding in plain sight, and using the same systems that power the global economy. And unless those systems are scrutinized more closely, they may continue to be exploited. As the DEA, FBI, and local authorities expand their investigation, new leads are emerging. The next step is to track the money, communications, and shell companies that enabled this network to grow undetected. The story was no longer just about drugs. It had become a blueprint for how organized crime could establish a foothold on American soil without being noticed. And what agents found next would expose just how deeply that root had spread. As agents moved deeper into the Lakewood warehouse, the full scale of the cartel's presence began to surface. Hidden behind storage racks and sealed compartments were weapons that left no doubt about the group's intentions. Federal teams recovered a total of 22 firearms scattered across multiple rooms, including assault-style rifles, high-capacity pistols, and unregistered shotguns. Some of the weapons had been modified for automatic fire. Others were stored with extended magazines and tactical attachments. The presence of these weapons suggested that the group was prepared for more than just smuggling. They had planned for confrontation. The seizure included several AR platform rifles, many with serial numbers removed or scratched beyond readability. Investigators believe some were purchased through straw buyers, while others may have been trafficked through unofficial routes. The shotguns appeared to have been altered for close-quarters defense, likely positioned near entry points inside the facility. Handguns with oversized magazines were found inside office drawers, glove compartments, and even taped beneath tables. The pattern was clear. These weapons were not for show. They were placed with purpose, ready to be used if necessary. Ballistics experts began cataloging the firearms immediately. Each weapon was tested, matched to databases, and evaluated for prior use. Some appeared new, straight from manufacturers. Others showed wear consistent with use in previous criminal activities. None were legally registered to the property or to any individual connected to the shell companies behind the warehouse lease. The lack of traceable ownership added another layer to the case, showing how deeply the operation had worked to stay hidden. Beyond the guns, agents also uncovered significant sums of cash, hidden in places designed to defeat standard searches. In total, they recovered $156,000 in U.S. currency. Much of the money was concealed inside cold storage units, mixed in with frozen goods and shrink-wrapped meat packages. The technique was deliberate. Cold temperatures reduce scent emission, making it harder for detection dogs to identify contraband. Thermal masking also disrupts heat signature tools, allowing the money to blend in with surrounding goods. Bundles of cash were wrapped in vacuum-sealed plastic, double-layered to prevent moisture damage. Each bundle was then coated in layers of plastic wrap and foil, placed inside food packaging boxes labeled for wholesale distribution. In one case, stacks of bills were found inside boxes marked as seafood, buried beneath layers of frozen shrimp. In another instance, agents discovered bricks of money stuffed inside crates labeled as cornmeal, with expiration dates printed to match the actual grocery stock. The operation's attention to detail was extreme. Some of the cash was stored in commercial kitchen equipment, hidden in false compartments beneath refrigerator units and inside hollowed-out ovens. In a separate area of the warehouse, agents discovered a sealed room lined with steel walls and soundproofing foam. Inside was a counting machine, 2 laptops, and a whiteboard listing amounts and initials. Investigators believe this was the nerve center for financial tracking, a quiet back room where large amounts of money were sorted, divided, and prepped for laundering. Tracing the source of the money proved difficult. None of it was labeled or marked, and the bundles showed no signs of having been recently withdrawn from a bank. Investigators suspect the funds were collected over months from distribution points in other states, then brought back to the hub for sorting. Several bills were later linked to retail cash registers in Kansas and Utah, suggesting that street-level sales had already pushed the product into the heartland. This combination of weapons and money painted a clear picture. The warehouse was more than just a stash point. It was a secure facility, equipped to defend itself and process large amounts of cash. Federal officials later described it as a cartel operations center embedded within a legitimate logistics corridor. It served as a secure node in a larger network, equipped with weapons to repel intrusion and systems to manage the financial flow of the drug trade. Analysts pointed out that the group's approach mirrored the behavior of organized crime syndicates. Their logistics were clean, their weapons were hidden but ready, and their financial systems blended into the everyday functions of food distribution. The goal was to create a setup that looked and felt like a legitimate business, one that could survive audits, inspections, and even casual observation. Every layer was designed to blend in seamlessly. This level of sophistication was not accidental. It reflected strategic planning and support from a larger infrastructure. The presence of both CJNG and Sinaloa indicators suggested that the Colorado hub was not loyal to a single faction. Instead, it operated as a shared asset, a neutral platform used by rival groups to move product and share profits. That arrangement enabled the network to scale more quickly, avoid turf conflicts, and increase its profit margins. FBI and DEA officials said the Colorado case marked a turning point in how cartel threats are viewed inside the United States. Previously, such complexity was associated with border towns or major ports. But here, in the quiet industrial zones of a Rocky Mountain state, federal agents encountered a system just as refined, just as dangerous, and just as effective. The Lakewood seizure, with its combination of meth, weapons, and money, represented more than just a successful raid. It exposed how vulnerable American infrastructure can become when criminal networks adapt to the rules of legitimate commerce. A warehouse becomes a lab. A grocery shipment becomes a disguise. A food company becomes a shell. In statements made following the operation, senior federal agents emphasized that this was the largest meth-related bust in Colorado's history. They called it a milestone, not just for the quantity of drugs removed, but for the intelligence gathered and the methods exposed. Evidence from the case is now being used to map similar operations across the United States. Agents are building a model based on their findings, using it to predict the locations of other cartel hubs. The blending of firearms, cash, and commercial logistics is being treated as a signature pattern. New software is being deployed to cross-check warehouse leases, shipping invoices, and import records, searching for the same red flags. The operation's success also came with a warning. As cartels move deeper into American systems, law enforcement must evolve. Task forces are expanding their reach. Analysts are being trained to track financial laundering, and partnerships with commercial regulators are being strengthened. This fight is no longer limited to highways or borders. It is inside supply chains. It is happening behind warehouse doors and beneath the logos of everyday food brands. And as investigators followed the trails of weapons and money, they began to piece together something even more complex, a map of connections, transactions, and silent partners. The next breakthrough would not come from what was stored in boxes. It would come from what was stored in the data. The story of Colorado's largest meth bust was not finished. The digital fingerprints left behind were already pointing toward the next cartel-linked operation, hidden far beyond the Rockies. The raid in Colorado revealed more than just bricks of meth. It exposed a disturbing truth. The Mexican cartels are no longer confined to the southern border. They have taken root in American cities, becoming an integral part of the nation's daily life infrastructure. From rental warehouses in quiet suburbs to refrigerated trucks on interstate highways, the cartel presence is now operating with the same sophistication as any global enterprise. What happened in Lakewood is a warning. The cartels are no longer relying solely on mules crossing deserts. They are investing in property, building logistics systems, and recruiting domestic personnel to maintain operations from within. They use grocery chains as camouflage, commercial invoices as cover, and the rhythm of American commerce as their shield. And this is not a one-time operation. It is a model, one that can be replicated in any state with major road access and agricultural infrastructure. With this kind of pressure, there's little doubt that the cartels will adapt again. Intelligence officials may begin shifting their supply chains to less monitored areas, seeking states with weaker task force presence or more fragmented law enforcement coordination. Smaller hubs, such as those in Iowa, Wyoming, or parts of the Pacific Northwest, may become the following fronts. Others may rely more heavily on technology, such as automated routing, thermal cloaking, or AI-enhanced surveillance of police response times to stay one step ahead. That is the danger. Every time a state cracks down, the threat does not disappear. It just moves. The war is no longer about capturing a single kingpin or seizing a single truckload. It is a battle over logistics, over information, over who can outthink the other faster. For that reason, vigilance is no longer optional. Meth is not just a criminal problem, it is a community crisis. It fuels domestic violence, tears families apart, and overwhelms schools, hospitals, and shelters. No city is immune, no neighborhood is too quiet. And no one can afford to assume that it will not happen near them. Colorado's success should be celebrated, but it must also serve as a blueprint for others to follow. The tools are there: interagency coordination, real-time intelligence, and civilian awareness. Now it is time to take what worked and apply it nationwide. Whether through expanded funding for joint task forces or improved screening at local freight hubs, each state must treat cartel infiltration as a real and growing threat. Because if the cartel playbook has evolved, so must our response. This story may have started in one warehouse, but it ends in every city willing to fight back. If you want to follow how this war unfolds, or see what federal agents found inside the cartel's secret weapons cache, subscribe now to Military Power. And don't forget, every comment you leave helps bring more attention to stories the cartels would rather keep in the dark.